Hello and welcome to the Cosmos video channel. We are an online store specializing in cosplay costumes. You are now listening to our original novel, The Extraordinary Werewolf. If you have any interest in cosplay outfits, you can contact us at coscosmos.com. Now, let's begin the story. Previously on The Extraordinary Werewolf, while returning to Bayek from the bustling town of Dude, Glenn encountered a silent, mysterious man named Black Crow standing over an injured woman on the roadside. Glenn recognized the man's scent as coming from his own eerie hometown.
Would you mind telling me why you are standing here, sir? It is fine if you don't want to answer.
It is fine if you don't want to answer, Glenn continued to probe, seeing that the man was relatively agreeable. He didn't expect a reply, but the man finally spoke, his voice low and husky. I am debating whether or not to save her. If I save her, I'll have to return all the way to Dude to find a clinic. If I don't save her, well, it doesn't feel right. Glenn was surprised that this was his dilemma. He thought for a moment and proposed, perhaps I can help.
Perhaps I can help. If you are willing, help me take these groceries back to my house, and I'll take this lady to the clinic. How does that sound?
The man silently contemplated for a few seconds, then gave a straightforward nod. Seeing this, Glenn smiled and extended his hand, saying, Hello, my name is.
Hello, my name is Glenn Nibankru.
Considering he might not need to interact with the original owner's acquaintances again, Glenn decided to use his own name, which translated seamlessly into the local language. The man looked at Glenn's hand, slowly shaking it. Black Crow. Black Crow? What an odd name. Judging by his demeanor, it doesn't sound like a nickname, Glenn thought to himself, though he showed no reaction. He told Black Crow the location of his house and where the key was hidden, not worrying about what the man might do. First, there was nothing valuable in the house. Second, Black Crow's desire to save the injured woman suggested he wasn't a malicious person. Besides, Glenn had already memorized Black Crow's scent. With a werewolf's powerful sense of smell, finding him would be easy. Once Black Crow took Glenn's bags, Glenn immediately checked the condition of the woman lying in the tall grass. She was a woman in her 50s, her hair slightly graying, her face deeply wrinkled, and dressed plainly, clearly a commoner. There were spots of blood at the corner of her mouth, and her exposed arms were covered in bruises. Glenn realized she had been struck heavily by a blunt object. Cuts and bloodstains on her clothes indicated knife wounds, but they weren't deep and thus not fatal. After giving her wounds a brief basic treatment, Glenn lifted the injured woman onto his back. He addressed Black Crow, who was standing quietly nearby.
I am off now, Mr. Black Crow. Remember to deliver the things to my house.
Seeing the man nod, Glenn turned and began walking towards Dude Town. Saying goodbye to her friends, Laila returned home as usual, but the sight that greeted her made her freeze instantly. The furniture was scattered and the house was a complete mess, as if it had been ransacked. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that her mother was missing.
Mother, where are you? Oh God, please protect her. Nothing must have happened.
Tears streaming down her face, Laila frantically searched the house for her mother, but the house was small and there was no sign of her. She rushed outside to ask the neighbors. Perhaps hearing the commotion, Mrs. Mann, who lived across the street from Laila, opened her door. She ran into a frantic Laila and, seeming to understand what had happened, waved her over.
My dear girl, Bob came back. He was very drunk and kept hitting Mrs. Delisle in your house. I saw him chase your mother and head off that way.
Father, Lila's heart seized up. God only knew what that madman might do to her mother. Ignoring everything else, Laila hiked up her simple skirt and ran toward the direction Mrs. Mann had pointed. Carrying a person weighing roughly 100 pounds for a few kilometers was not difficult for the current Glenn. After making several inquiries, he finally delivered the injured woman to a private clinic. There were 3 doctors and 2 nurses at the clinic. After the nurses carried the woman inside, one of the doctors stepped forward and asked,
Is this gentleman the patient's family member?
No, I encountered this lady on the road. Glenn immediately shook his head and explained.
I see. In that case, are you willing to cover the corresponding expenses, sir? I apologize. I don't have any money on me. We'll have to wait until the lady wakes up and she can handle it herself. Very well, sir.
Glenn waited there for a moment, thinking it best to leave after the woman woke up. Before long, a doctor informed Glenn that the woman had woken up. Glenn stood up and said, "Then I shall take my leave."
Then, I shall take my leave.
Just then, a familiar figure rushed into the clinic. The moment she entered, she grabbed Glenn's hand, her eyes red with tears, panting heavily as she asks, "Sir, did you just bring an injured lady here on your back?"
Sir, did you just bring an injured lady here on your back?
"Layla, why is she here?" Glenn nodded blankly. Dude Town was neither too big nor too small. Many residents knew each other. Glenn carrying a bloodied, barely conscious person through the streets to find a clinic had been quite noticeable. Layla had been searching the town for ages, nearly crying herself dry. Just as despair set in, someone informed her of Glenn's actions. Hope instantly surged. She memorized Glenn's features and ran to the clinic, ignoring her gasping and exhaustion. Upon receiving confirmation, Layla rushed into the examination room. Seeing the weak person on the bed, she quickly threw herself beside her, sobbing uncontrollably. One doctor exclaimed.
Mother.
The woman on the bed tightly embraced Layla, weeping as well.
My poor child.
Glenn stood outside with a few doctors and nurses, quietly watching.
What a touching scene! Indeed.
Two nurses said, wiping away tears. Only Glenn stood by the side, seemingly lost in thought. She is certainly a very pretty girl. Her eyes, face, and nose are all beautiful. No wonder the original owner noticed her and even remembered her name clearly. Glenn recalled the previous scene, making a mental assessment. Perhaps remembering the person who helped them, Layla forced herself to calm down, regulated her breathing, and said something to her mother. Then, she slowly approached Glenn, looking up at him with tear-stained eyes, and bowed slightly.
Thank you very much, sir. Truly, if it weren't for you, I can't imagine what would have happened. So, could you please leave your home address? I would like to visit in person to thank you. I beg you.
Seeing such a beautiful girl plead with him so gratefully, Glenn thought he should really thank Black Crow. However, saying so would require a lengthy explanation, so he dismissed the idea. My house. You really wouldn't want to go there. You'd probably be half scared to death, Glenn thought. He initially wanted to refuse, but seeing her determined attitude, he knew she wouldn't give up easily. He finally nodded and said,
Bayek Town. Go straight through the main entrance. You'll see a large villa and a 3-story house. Mine is the one sandwiched right between them.
"I'll have the beast guard her discreetly, that should be fine," Glenn thought to himself. At this, Layla's small face was filled with joy. She bowed to Glenn again and said, "You truly are an incredibly kind gentleman."
You truly are an incredibly kind gentleman.
"You have no idea what you are in for," Glenn thought with a touch of mischief.
Bayek Town.
The surrounding doctors and nurses exchanged confused glances. They didn't seem to have heard of the town. Glenn had anticipated this.